And so I want to read to you from the Seneca Falls Declaration of Sentiments. This is 1848. It's a kind of pivotal document of American early feminism, first-wave feminism, which, again, ends in 1920, really, for all intents and purposes, with getting the right to vote. And feminism doesn't really take off again until the 60s and 70s. That's another story for another day. Let me read the Seneca Falls Declaration of Sentiments, just a portion of it. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted, deriving their just powers from the consent of the government. So, obviously, right, this is the Declaration of Independence, just rewritten very slightly in a feminist context, right? And what's the change? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal. What they're saying here, what they're arguing implicitly, is that the meaning of this document, that no meaning is ever contained in just like the words on the page. There's always the spirit. The letter killeth, but the spirit giveth life, as Paul says. And they're saying the spirit of this document supports unfolding the word men into men and women. And they're saying that's what the founders meant, right? They were talking about the species of human, right? And they were talking about rights that attach to all human beings. And you can prove that this is true by noting that their Creator endows them with rights. And if we go back to the history of the Creator, right, we find in Genesis that man was created in God's image, male and female, right? And so there is an excellent case to be made that men and women are therefore, being both created in the image of God, are equal in these respects. They may be totally dissimilar in a million other respects, unlike one another in every other way, but as members of the human species, they are stamped with the image of God and therefore equal. And so they're making an argument from within the tradition here. They are making an internal argument for reform and change, because they're making, like, as I said, it's a big ask they're making. They're saying we want the right to vote, which is, male suffrage is been the norm, right? And the difference between the sexes is foundational to civilization, which I agree with and believe in. So why do I, as somebody who fundamentally believes that men and women are very, very different, why do I agree with this part of the Seneca Falls Declaration of Sentiments? It's because I can see that it is taken from the logic, the very logic that tells me that men and women have rights, that tells me that men and women are different, right? This tradition, which I live in, which has schooled and shaped me, teaches me that this is a natural development, even though it's never been seen before. It's like a tree growing a flower, right? If you just watched a tree, if you've never seen a tree before, and you sort of watch a tree grow, well, there's these shoots, and we got these branches, and they're kind of growing and growing. And then spring comes, and the tree does something you could never have predicted in a million years. Never would you ever have said that the tree would have this like pink explosion at the end of its branches, right? And yet you look at it, if you've known the tree from its youth, from its infancy, you know that this is a natural development. If the tree suddenly started dropping bombs, you would say something unnatural is happening here, right? Something that violates the law of nature. That's what these reforms are like. They're reforms from within the tradition, which unfold its logic in a demonstrable way through its history. And so this is why, although some people have recently, some women have sort of semi-jokingly argued for the repeal of the 19th Amendment because women tend to vote in ways that conservatives don't like, right? Nevertheless, I have to recognize that this is what Newman is talking about when he says that when the principle first emerges, it's colored with its local dirt. It just looks the way that it happens to have emerged and then becomes purer and clearer. This is a good argument that they're making in the Seneca Falls Declaration of Sentiments. Now, from the same document, let me read a bad argument. They go on to try to continue rewriting the Declaration of Independence. The history of mankind is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations on the part of man toward woman, having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over her. Now, maybe they just got carried away with the rhetoric. I don't know, but actually, I do know because I've been studying feminism lately, the history of feminism. These two things have always been in the movement from the beginning: the good stuff and the bad stuff. They've been intermingled together, but they are different, and I want to show you why, so that we can think about what reforms are good and what reforms are bad in our future. Right? They're different because this next statement that all of history is just man against woman, right? Man oppressing woman. That is destroying the ground on which they stand. They're basically condemning the entirety of human history, that the things that they aim to change are not just worthy of change, but are evil and wrong and bad. But if the logic of your reform invalidates and destroys the logic of everything else, right? If everything that went before you was oppressive and wrong, then you've rid yourself. You've destroyed everything that you would ever refer to, that whole tradition out of which the flowers can grow, right? Out of which the tree can bear fruit. You've destroyed it in the utterance of your demand for change. And the dark, sad irony is that you're demanding change only because you were informed by that very tradition. And so to condemn the entire history of mankind as you ask for a change in the Western tradition is to cut off your nose to spite your face. And so these are two different lines of reasoning in one document. And I'm trying to show how you can identify them by using the rubrics that we've been talking about now for an hour from Newman and Chesterton and Lewis, right? By understanding what it means to change in order to stay the same, even within a single document, you can discern. It's not impossible to recognize a good reform from a bad reform with reference to the absolute truths of natural law and natural right.